Okay, hello Bio. We're continuing on with chapter 6 today. We're going to look at some non-renewable and non-renewable resources. So these are going to be, again, remember our focus is on how humans relate to the biosphere. So these are going to be things that we as humans take away from the biosphere that are going to be considered to either be renewable or non-renewable. And so I've already alluded to this, but how are different resources classified in terms of human use? So they can either human environmental goods and services, again, are our resources, can be classified as either renewable or non-renewable, meaning that they can either be replaced or they cannot be replaced. So our first one, renewable resources, they can regenerate if they are alive, or they can be replenished by biochemical cycles if they are non-living. So these are things that we can take out of the environment that eventually will be replaced, whether or not they are regrowing, or they'll come back. If they're a living creature, they'll repopulate, or if it's just a natural cycle, and like the carbon cycle or the nitrogen cycle, and eventually it will just make its way back to where we originally took it from. So an example is a tree is an example of a renewable resource, because a new tree can be planted in place of an old tree that has either died or has been cut down. So that's an example of a renewable resource. A non-renewable resource is one that cannot be replenished by natural processes. So once it's gone, it's not coming back. So our examples of non-renewable resources include things like fossil fuels, which are coal, oil, and natural gas, because once these have been depleted or used up, they are gone forever. So once we use up all of our fossil fuels, they are gone forever. So that's why looking for an alternative fuel source for cars and things like that is going to be a big issue, because eventually we're going to run out of oil to power all of our different machines. And so, again, kind of alluding back to what the main overriding theme of this chapter is, what effects do human activities have on all these natural resources? So what are humans doing in order to kind of help or hurt whether or not these resources are coming back? So human activities overall will affect the quality and supply of renewable resources such as land, forests, fisheries, air, and fresh water. So our human activities, even we are either using up our renewable and non-renewable resources, and then our activities are negatively affecting our renewable resources as well. So it's not that we're just using them up, we're harming them even when we're not using them. However, there has been some ways to try to get around this, and one of this is called sustainable development, and this is kind of, again, a practice to help us kind of alleviate these problems, because it's a way of using natural resources without depleting them, and of providing for human needs without causing long-term environmental harm. So this is a practice that's kind of, again, it's more of a basic way of living, but it is what some people are trying to do to kind of help with damaging the environment. And so then now our specific resources that, again, we're trying to protect with these things like sustainable development, our one resource is our land resource. And these are important because they provide space for human communities and raw materials for industry, and this also includes the soils in which crops are grown. And if managed properly, our soil can be a renewable resource. So if we take care of the soil, provide it with enough nutrients, things like that, it can be considered a renewable resource. And so obviously land is going to be important, because it's going to basically provide where we all live and the materials for things that we need to survive. And then it also is the area where we grow our food. So land resources are very important. And then going back to kind of the crop portion, that if it's managed properly, it can be a renewable resource. So food crops will grow best in fertile soil, which would include a mix of sand, clay, and rock particles. And remember the humus, which is the material from decayed organisms, so that makes for basically like a natural fertilizer. However, some problems that we're encountering with our soil is a process known as erosion, and this is just the wearing away of our surface soil by either water or wind. And plowing our land will remove roots that hold the soil in place, and therefore will increase the rate of soil erosion. So erosion will just occur naturally over time, whether or not we want it to or not. All surfaces are going to be worn away at some point by the water and the wind. So that's actually so there's really no way around it. But however, when we plow up the land and we take out all the roots, all the soil that usually would be held in place by those roots are going to be more easily eroded or moved away, and that's kind of an unnatural occurrence. So that is how humans, again, can negatively affect that. And then if this erosion gets bad enough, something called desert desertification, sorry, that's a tongue twister, desertification, and this is a process which productive areas are turned into deserts. So this can happen if enough soil is removed, and it can also be caused from a combination of farming, overgrazing, and drought. So any of these things any of these three processes, or a combination of the three, can cause a once fertile area to be turned into a desert in a process called desertification. And then we've had this obviously isn't a huge problem, or it can become a huge problem, but we have a variety of sustainable development practices that will prevent the problems of soil erosion and desertification. And these practices include things that are known as contour plowing, and this is when we do this to fields that are plowed across the slope of the land to reduce erosion. Another thing is leaving the stems and roots of the previous year's crop in place to help hold the soil, so therefore it's not going to blow around as much and erode. And then planting a field with rye rather than leaving it unprotected from erosion. So that is done a lot around here, kind of what we know maybe as a cover crop to kind of keep the fields ready to go. And so another big resource that kind of is going to come into place is our forest resources. And Earth's forests, they are an important resource for the products they provide and the ecological functions they perform. So forests are big because, again, they're going to help us produce things, wood for our houses, and so we're also going to be home for all of our natural wildlife that we need to keep around. So forests, again, they do a lot of things. They provide wood for products and fuel. They remove CO2 and they produce oxygen because obviously there's a lot of trees. They store nutrients. They provide habitats for food and food for organisms. They help moderate the climate. They help limit soil erosion, and they protect all of our freshwater supplies. So forests are extremely important. You're going to probably need to know these big characteristics of forests here because they are, again, very important. And whether or not a forest is considered to be a renewable resource will depend partly on the type of forest. So the forests in the northeast of the portion of the world, they're renewable because they have been logged and they have grown back naturally. So we have cut them down, but there's also been replaced, and so they all are growing back naturally. However, there's what are called old growth forests, and that means because the trees are a lot older and up in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, and they're non-renewable because it can take centuries to produce them. So they're old growth, so the trees take a long time to grow back. So they're not going to be considered a renewable resource because of the fact that they take so long to grow back. And because of this loss of forest that can occur with old growth forests is called deforestation, and has several negative effects because erosion can occur and it can wash away the nutrients in our topsoil, and then grazing or plowing can permanently change local soils and microclimates, which will prevent the regrowth of trees. So deforestation, exactly what it sounds like, the forest kind of leaving us. And so however we can manage our forest, and by mature trees can be harvested selectively, but to promote the growth of younger trees and preserve the forest ecosystem. So we can take out one huge tree that might be sucking up a lot of the nutrients and allow multiple younger trees to grow. And there's also tree geneticists are breeding new, faster growing trees that actually produce high quality wood. So there has been some strides made to kind of help protect our forests as well. So that's it for our first part of section 2. Let me know if you have any questions.